Hi, and welcome to the Thriving Writers Show. Today on the show, I have the founder and editor-in-chief of Publishous, a growing medium publication. It's also got a store for the writers who publish there. And the beautiful thing with any publication, especially this one, is it leverages the power of the crowd to grow your audience as a writer. Nicole Akers, welcome to the show.
Hi, Frank. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Glad to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first, let's start back where it all started. You've been interested in writing and publishing for a really long time. In fact, I think you've got a copy of your first self-published book.
I do. I actually brought a couple of them along. Oh my goodness. Check out this beauty.
Awesome.
This is a fabric covered piece of cardboard with tape binding that we hand drilled, a little hand drill on my creative writing teacher's dining room table for the holes to sew it together.
Wow.
Frank, do you remember? Yes. Sewing and writing, lots of skill there, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
Let's date ourselves. Do you remember pound puppies?
Yes, vaguely. I do remember.
I had pound puppies. They were some of my best friends. I had two that I loved. And so I wrote a story about them. This was The Adventures of Kris Kringles and Christine.
How about that? I like the alliteration there.
Yes, I've always loved alliteration, still today. So yes, The Adventures of Kris Kringles and Christine, both dogs, my pound puppies. And their adventures as they stole a pie off of a lady's windowsill that she had just baked.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So you put your own spin on the steal the pie off the shelf story.
Absolutely. That was 4th grade, by the way.
Okay.
Yes. So, yeah, it's always kind of been there, writing. And it's something that, once it's in the blood, it just never really goes away.
I can identify with that. I can remember a magazine I think I published in 3rd grade. It wasn't quite as nice as yours I think it was just construction paper and pens and crayons, and it was stapled together 3 times, the rule of 3 for writers, of course.
Yes. Nice. Nice.
So let's talk about your publication, about Medium, and there's one more.
There is another one. The Day the Pencils Came to Life. Inspired by another set of real life events.
Tell us about this.
Could you believe I had a pencil collection?
Really?
Yeah, I did. And so I dreamt that my pencils came to life and walked around and did things. This, I think, was a couple years later, actually 6th grade. And I'm getting really, really vulnerable here. How about that cute kid?
That is cute. Man, look, you got a lot more hair than I do.
Oh, geez, Anyway, so from dog adventures to pencil adventures to writing adventures.
Awesome. And the pencils are still alive for you, right?
The pencils are still alive. Yes.
Love the metaphor to that.
It's fun, isn't it?
It is. It is. So let's talk about other writers' cyber pencils. What do you see as some of the problems that writers are having when they're using Medium to pitch publications or use it as a blogging platform? What do you see as some of the challenges that they could overcome, just seeing it from your side on the other side of the publication?
I love Medium because it's a great platform for writers to get connected, grow their audiences, and earn some revenue. That said, I talk with a lot of writers there, and yeah, I see some things that they commonly do, being not sending drafts. I understand why some writers find it easier to publish to their profile, and there are a lot of reasons not to do that. First of all, Medium says not to. Medium tells publications not to accept published material that isn't a draft. So to not accept something that's published simply because it doesn't perform. The algorithms are set up for a fresh piece. I mean, really, whether it's, food, when we're talking produce, fresh is best, right? So the same for writing. The fresh piece is the best piece, and it performs optimally.
So just in case anybody's watching and they don't know what you mean by a draft, could you kind of explain what that is so that, if they're doing it wrong, maybe they can do it right?
Well, so when you write a story, it's really the same in the beginning. You write your story, and it's a draft before you hit publish. And so when you hit those 3 dots and you drop down to add to a publication, and you send your story to the publication, and once the publication publishes, it appears on your profile. Now, some other important things to do there are to add your tags. If you're a top writer and you need certain tags to keep that top writer status, I don't see a problem with adding a little note. I'm a top writer in, please add this as a tag. Any good editor is going to give you that tag if it's appropriate for the piece. If they can tag it that way, they're going to help you, especially if you're asking them or telling them that this is something you really need. If you need that tag and it fits your piece, odds are you're going to get it. So that's really important. And there are 5 tags, so fill out your tags. That will get more eyes on your piece. And obviously the tags with the biggest number of eyes mean more views.
At least potentially, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. There's a little bit of controversy about using pieces that you've posted on your blog already and importing them into Medium. What's your take on that? And is it better to use Medium first, or just use Medium exclusively, or how do you feel about that?
A lot of writers import from their blog, and the biggest problem in a piece not performing is that it not be the freshest piece. The really cool thing about that import tool is that there's a little piece of code that's attached, and so the piece gets all the normal love from the search engines, whatever search engine you use, right? So you still get the love when you bring it from your blog. There is a lot of controversy also about whether you should put your fresh work on your blog or put it on Medium. I think of Medium as a playground. I like to write about a lot of different things there, things that may not really even be appropriate for my blog. And so I look at Medium as a place to explore and have fun. It's really important to know your pub, though, and to make sure whatever piece you write, if you're choosing that it's a completely fresh piece or you're bringing it from your blog, there are a lot of theories there. A lot of public figures are saying fresh is best, fresh all the way. Some are saying, you know what, it really doesn't matter if you bring it from your blog. So there's some confusion out there. I don't think there's a real answer, honestly. I think it's more important than anything that it be a draft so that it performs.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think too, maybe what you've alluded to so far is just that it's appropriate, whether it be your tags or to fit the publication. And I think too, you could extend that to if you have some intent in mind as to what you want, who you want to read this and what you want them to get from it, then I think that makes a big difference whether you imported it from your blog or whether it's fresh content.
I agree completely. And it is important to gauge your audience, and that is to know your pub a little bit, to know your destination. Recently, I wrote an off-color piece, and I'm not attached to anything that's really suitable for that. So I had to go seek out a home where it fit. And if it doesn't fit, well, honestly, I feel like I'm wasting my time. If the piece doesn't fit either the publication or the publication's audience, why would that pub want to publish it? Right? So it's a waste of my time. It's a waste of their time. And to get that piece published, it has to have a good home.
Absolutely.
So find a good home and then send it.
That's true. That's true. Well, one thing that came to mind when you were talking about freshness and so forth, well, what about an evergreen type piece that would, at least in theory, be fresh all the time? How does that fit into what you're talking about?
Well, evergreen is perfect. It's timeless, right? So, a lot of people write for holidays or current events, and those are great, but they're also going to run a timeline and then lose engagement at some point, right?
Right.
Evergreen can always get some love. It can always be a good thing, because when you keep sharing that link, there's no gauge to turn off. It's still likable and timeless. Those are the best pieces to write if you're looking for ongoing engagement.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the trick is just to figure out what evergreen really is in your niche.
Yes.
And with the world, some things in the world change, but then other things, maybe like the underlying principles behind how things work, really those don't change. Human behavior doesn't really change. I mean, the things we interact with may, but the reasons why we do, those are evergreen and constant and don't change.
This is true. Human behavior at its core doesn't change, right? We all need basic things. We need shelter, food, whatever the basics are in your views, then they don't change.
I think maybe even more important than that is that we all want to feel important and that we matter. And if we can read something that helps us get a little more of that, then I think we're onto something then.
Yes.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. A lot of people probably have no idea how busy an editor can be, especially at a place like yours that has so many articles in it. Tell us about that and why, we need to give you a little bit of time to process what we send your way.
Well, I don't think any publisher is on demand. Some can respond pretty quickly. But one of the things to keep in mind when getting published, some of the big ones out there comfortably take 2 to 3 days. Some take a week or more on a regular basis. Some take even longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a week is a decent gauge that if you're not published in a week, it's probably okay to look at a different home for that piece. A week being probably the longest, shortest time to get published, right? So that's something everybody has to gauge for themselves. But, 2-3 days from some of the big ones out there, and they're called relatively quick, right, Frank?
Yes, that's true.
Right. They're quick at 2-3 days. And so I think a week, if you're uncomfortable with your piece being out there that long and you need to try to find a different home at that point, I think everybody kind of understands. A lot of the publications are, some will say they don't want you to republish within a certain amount of time. And some say your work is always yours. I am a huge fan of your work always being your work. Some ask for a lead time to let it hang out with the pub for a little bit of time before you republish. I guess the common courtesy there is I would gauge that to say about 2 weeks. If you've got it out there, you've let the pub run with it, everybody's had fun with that algorithm, and you're going to republish it, make it fresh for your blog, give it a different keyword, a different title. Usually a strong 2 weeks would be common courtesy there, I would think. Would you agree with that?
I'd say that sounds pretty reasonable. Yeah. 2 weeks is a pretty good bit of time. And it's amazing. It's amazing how fast 2 weeks can pass.
No kidding. I think it's also important that when you send a piece to a pub that you pretty much plan on it staying there. Some pubs claim a right to your work, which I don't agree with, and I don't think Medium agrees with from its published material. I don't think anybody has a right to your work, and I could cite some sources that I can get to Medium written material that would back up that thinking. But that said, I think that when your pub will get a notification right away if you pull a piece. Whether or not you know it, it happens. But if you're talking to your pub and say you get a book deal, say you've got something with publications and all of a sudden something changed because you got a book deal. First of all, awesome for you, right? And if you're contacting your pub and saying, hey, I got to pull these pieces because I got a book deal, I think every editor is going to smile as you pull those because they know why, right?
Right.
In the converse, probably not so much because if you have a lot of pieces out there and all of a sudden you're pulling all your pieces and nobody knows why, some pubs speak really strongly that you can lose your writer's status for that kind of behavior.
Yeah,
so,
I can understand that.
There it is, both sides of it, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're going to get that book published and you're pulling your piece, great, and that is awesome. Let's celebrate that. Talk to your pub first before you go pulling all your pieces.
Yeah, as a promotion strategist myself, I would think that it wouldn't be really such a good idea to pull your pieces anyway, because that's just more exposure for you, right? I mean, because that stuff is out there and you're probably not going to make it, or at least you shouldn't, make it word for word the same in a book when people can read it online. But of course, there's also that idea that, well, yeah, you can go online and read all this, but here it's all together in one place for you right here, and you can read it there as well.
Okay, I can cite a big name right now that has done that word for word, verbatim, published blog post, and then just literally strung them together and made a book. It has happened. It might not be the most advantageous, but it was for this person, and this James Altucher, right? He flat out said, I published every bit of this book as a blog post. I glued them all together, and here we go. Here's a book. So it does happen, but usually it would appear different. And for algorithm and search engine love, for those pieces to perform, they've got to be different. They've got to be altered in some way.
Yeah, and I suppose that's a pretty unique situation, and it would depend on what kind of audience you have and what they expect from you, right?
Yes, yes. But when James Altucher is backpacking and he's written his book and blog posts and can pull them all together, go, dude.
Yeah, right. If you can make it work, man.
Right. Oh, we're having a good time.
We are. So let me ask you this. If, say you're a writer out there and you want to become a writer for a publication, what are some ways you can do that? I mean, I know there's a certain way you can do it for yours, but what are some of the ways that you've seen out there that publications have as like the doorway for you becoming a contributor to their publication?
Some of them are really hard to find. Some of them hide whatever the link is, the doorway. Some of them are so well hidden, they're really hard to find. Those that link to their about page, which is a great place to visit if you're looking to get published, put the pub into the magnifying glass and pull up the pub and their about page. It's pretty common, I would think, that there's a link there, or a link to a form, or a link to submit a draft. Most of them that are actively looking for new writers make it pretty easy to find. Every once in a while, you'll find one that's buried and really hard to find. There's also the S-Median account that can link a lot of pubs quickly. However, you also need to have your draft links available and your published links, right, Frank?
Yes, absolutely. So they can see what you're about.
Right. You've got to have your references available, right? So if you're linking the same draft to every one of those and one of them says yes, or more than one says yes, all of a sudden you're cranking out some content, right? Or just accepting one for the time being.
Yes. And I guess that's really a good point to make too, is that, you know, when you're pitching multiple publications, you can really only say yes to one with that particular piece, right? Because that might create a conflict, because, you know, every publication, every person had to have some exclusivity when they print something. You know, you don't want your stuff to show up exactly the same somewhere else, because, you know, you want something to set you apart and make you unique, right?
Yes. And actually Medium straight up says that's not something they allow. Medium very clearly says in written word that a piece can be live on one pub at a time.
All the more reason not to do so.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't want to get kicked off the platform. That's a bigger problem to face than just getting kicked off one publication, for sure.
Yes, but if you're ever in doubt, you can always publish to your profile. That's never a problem. Of course, if you want more eyes, then you've got to pay attention to what that pub offers and what they're asking, which most of the time they're not asking too much, right? They're asking for a little lead time, a fresh piece, or at least a draft. I think that's pretty workable, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say it is. In fact, it's probably a lot easier than approaching a popular website and trying to pitch something to them, because they've got a list of rules that can go on for, 2 or 3 pages if you were to print it out, maybe longer.
Right. And as far as a draft, Frank, if you were going to publish a guest post, would you accept previously published material to promote a writer?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't.
Exactly. And I wouldn't either, because when you're writing as a guest post and you want someone to promote your work, it's got to be something fresh.
Absolutely. And one thing too, I was thinking about when we talked about pieces that were, your pieces should be yours. But even if a publication does own that piece, they don't own your experience and your knowledge that you can always repackage into another post somewhere else, or you can update what you knew when you wrote that post 6 months ago. So really, your writing and your intellectual property, or whatever you want to call it, is always yours. It's just the agreements that you make that can make or break your future.
Yes, and I'm thinking of one in particular that's rather large that will hold your work for 6 months, and then sometimes will allow it to be released for resyndication. And like you say, you can always reframe that experience or reframe the content. And picking up a small excerpt and taking it a whole new direction makes it fresh. I mean, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it does. And I do this all the time. Yeah.
Shh, we won't tell too many secrets, right?
Yeah. But really, I mean, if you're focusing on a topic like I am, and even though it does have some breadth to it, you still you need content all the time, right? To be consistent and to always present that message and have it in front of people's eyes. And a lot of times I have found that even just interacting with people in comments on blogs, I can get an idea there just by seeing a problem that somebody's having or a struggle that they're facing and saying, hey, I know something you can do with this. And I could put that in a blog post so that not only you can benefit, but anyone who gets a chance to read that can benefit too. And to me, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Your pain point, or if you're reading and someone else has identified a pain point and you have something to say about that, say it. It can be so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll help you grow as a writer as well, and as a teacher, or whatever it is that you see yourself doing as an artist. You just gotta, as you said, you just gotta get out there and do it. Take some risks and share your message and refine it so that people can benefit from it the most. And you'll never be able to do that if you just sit on it and think about it in the privacy of your own home and never share it with anybody.
Right. You have to step out and take some action.
Right. And you might get some criticism for it, but that's okay, because you can either ignore it or you can look at it objectively. Like, let's just say, I think I was talking with somebody once and I said, okay, you're having these problems. Have you ever thought about writing it out and looking at your writing, and then talk to yourself as if you were a friend of yours and say, hey, this is what I see you're facing here. And it's hard to do that, but I think if you can do that, man, and look at criticism that way, man, you can really benefit from it.
Ignore it or grow from it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only two things. Otherwise, just do like the popular people. I don't have time to read the comments anyway, So it never bothers you.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you know what you're here for. You know what your message is, and you know what you're called to do. So just do it, and get it out there.
There you go.
All right. Before we finish this, let's talk about some technical secrets that we may not have covered so far that people on Medium need to know.
Technical secret. Okay. If you have a piece that you submitted and it feels like it's taking a long time to publish, here's a question I have for you. Have you gone back and edited it too much or multiple times? And let me explain why. Because when you submit a piece, you're at the top of the publication queue because it's brand new. And the more other pieces come on top of that, the closer you get to the bottom of the list, which is a good place to be because that's where your publishers start. They start with the piece that has been there the longest, most likely, right? And they get that published before the newer ones. Here's something you may not know. If you go back and keep touching that piece with edits, it's all new again. You just bumped right back up to the top of the list. So if there's something you have to edit, do it. Absolutely. First, edit before you send it, right? It should be in the best form possible, right? But if there's something after you've sent the draft, think about it before you touch it again. And if it's worth touching, then make the edit. If it's a hard edit, definitely do it before I publish, right? But if it's a soft edit, maybe there's a comma out of place or an apostrophe. Okay, so maybe that editor is going to catch it. Probably they should, right? But if it's still there on the other side of publish, you can edit and go back in and move a comma, move an apostrophe. Nobody's ever going to know, and you're going to be okay. I promise. Now, the hard edits, not so much. You know, pubs use tags for a reason, and some of them speak strongly to this as well. Once they've tagged it that way for a reason. If you're not communicating about your top writer tags, they're going to give you, and if they add some, I see some do, some don't. Some, if you send it with one tag, they're going to publish with one tag, because if you wanted 5, you had the option and you could have filled them out, right? But, you know, we try to fill out the tags with the highest performing ones. That said, they also need to fit our categories. So one of those tags has to fit, but you've still got 4 more to rock, right?
All right.
So if you need lots of eyes, or you need your tags, you know, fill those out. But if you need certain ones, again, put a little note in there. I don't know any editor that's going to let that note go through to publish. And my goodness, if they do, let's meet them, right? We got to have that. But fill out your tags and don't over edit. Don't keep touching that again and again, because it bumps you right back up to the top of the list, and it's going to prolong your publishing time.
Gotcha. That's an interesting thought. I'm sure nobody has really, at least nobody I know of, has thought about that. So that's a super valuable tip right there that, yeah, I'm not sure anybody's going to hear anywhere else.
Awesome. That's what we aim to do. Give them something
Absolutely.
that they're not going to hear anywhere else, and that's hugely valuable.
Absolutely. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Before we go, tell us about Publishous. Are you accepting new writers now? And if so, what are the categories and so forth that you are accepting them for?
Okay, now you're going to put me on the spot, because now that you've asked me, I'm going to forget all 5, right? Okay, so 5 categories for writers, for wellness, creativity. So that could be a poem, a fictional piece, a non-fictional piece, a life story. You know, have fun. It's creative. It's open, right? It's meant to be that way. Productivity. So that could be work productivity, life productivity, and then also wellness. So the categories are chosen to be open and a little bit loose, actually a whole lot loose. Like if it fits, if it can loosely fit a wellness category or a writer category, whatever it may be, whatever we can get to get you the tag, they're not hard and fast, right? We want to get you in, we want to get you published, and so those are meant to be loose. We are absolutely accepting writers. We are on the grow, and we want to grow with you. And some of the really huge benefits are for our most frequented writers, the ones that come and see us the most and publish with us. They have opportunity to put their books, their products, their wares in the shop. And we do share those. We tell about them. So-and-so just put their book in the shop, buy it here, right? So we do that. And beyond that, we also promote your work. We get out there in front of it. We lead with the link, we tag you, and we give it some hashtags if appropriate. So we get the most eyes on it that we can. across social media platforms, and we have the huge crowdsourcing on the website itself. So,
Awesome.
you bring your list, I bring my list, we introduce. It's a virtual meetup. It's a fun place, and writers are talking there, and there are a lot of eyes there. Furthermore, we have the author spotlight. It's gauged by analytics. The most visited pieces on the website pop up for the author spotlight, and it's a fun little place where we highlight someone, tell about what they're doing, a little bit about their background, and share their work. And then we also Twitter chat. So it's a fun little pub chat at Publishous on Twitter. And the best thing about pub chat is the interaction. Frank, I think you've been there a time or two. And isn't it fun?
It's a blast.
You never know where it's going. And you may end up somewhere that you never imagined, all in a Twitter chat. So, at Publishous Pub Chat on Twitter, and that's on, right now, that's currently Wednesday night, and it's always a good time.
Oh, yes, for sure. And one thing I wanted to say, too, as a writer for Publishous, I can attest that your publication probably shares my work more than any other publication I write for. So I thank you for that. And I do want to give you a shout out on that. So certainly appreciate that. And I'm always happy to retweet your stuff as well.
Thank you.
Well, this has been loads of fun, and maybe we can figure out a way to get you back on here again at some point. You're a great guest. I've enjoyed having you, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thanks.